Clarity converts, but only if your page is built for action. Too many B2B landing pages get buried under bloated copy, weak CTAs, and poor optimization. In this episode, we unpack how to structure, message, and measure landing pages for real results. From clarity to consumption rate, with Tas Bober, founder of the Scroll Lab. Hi everyone, Taylor Moon here, Director of Content over at ClearVoice, and welcome to the CV Mic, short for Marketers in Conversation. And today I'm joined by Tas Bober, who is the founder of the Scroll Lab, and I'm passing the mic on over to her. Hey Tas.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. I am a bit of someone that has followed you, if you will, on LinkedIn for a bit. I know a bit about you, but I want to kind of pass it over to you to give a little bit of an intro to yourself that those that might not know who you are.
All right. So Tas Bober, founder of Scroll Lab. We covered that. My background is in web and digital, specifically for B2B companies, kind of randomly fell into that and then have just been there forever. Kind of like Stockholm syndrome, you're just like, I'm here now. I'm part of it. I'm loving
Feel like
it.
that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I worked in-house at B2B companies for about 15 years, was part of lots of web and digital teams, led 3 of them, and then decided to venture out on my own a couple years ago, kind of bullied my way onto the Exit 5 podcast. And I joke with that team all the time. I'm like the unofficial self-proclaimed mascot for Exit 5. They're like
I
very
love that.
unpaid promoter. Just been a big fan there. And so very
Yeah.
happy and lucky to do a lot of like work for them and the community and things like that. Probably most commonly known now for outside of LinkedIn content, but comical LinkedIn comments, which is really where my strengths lie, and being the purple landing page lady. So now I own my
Yeah.
own niche consultancy that helps B2B companies with their paid landing pages. But something that I've noticed this year is a lot of them are coming to me and saying, can you just do it for my main website? So I'm like, all right. Same principles. Few things changed, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been enjoying myself the last couple of years, just causing a scene.
As you should. And I think you've even talked about this a bit is kind of a lot of people are like, wow, that kind of transition and going in-house, if you will, having that expertise, all the years, if you will, there, and then making the kind of jump, leap of faith, whatever you want to call it, to kind of do your own thing. And people get really kind of caught up in that. But one thing you've said prior that jumped out at me is like, yes, you've done that, but how you're doing that and what you're doing in it, that's really kind of created this. You still have a passion, you have I don't know, work-life balance rhythm. Can you talk to me kind of what that looks like on your just regular day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's funny because I think in B2B, especially in tech, we are all just like the grow at all cost mindset is like beat into us from the minute we enter the industry. And
Always,
so
yeah.
it's always so fascinating to other people when they hear that I don't have like the $10 million revenue goal for my little consultancy. It started purely as like a kind of side, you know, passion project while I hung out with my kids and things like that. And it just unexpectedly grew, which I'm very grateful for. But I optimize more for the life in the work life because I kind of did that for the 15 years, which was give a lot more to work, which was great.
Yeah.
I'm very ambitious as a person. I just feel like this season of my life with young children, I kind of have to do a little different kind of optimization, no pun intended.
Sure.
A/B testing it. And so for me, my goal is more, how can I get more time back while doing work where I'm financially comfortable? So kind of the trifecta. And so that's kind of what I optimize for. And so everyone is always fascinated when I tell them I have a 3-day work week. And they're like, what? What is that like? That sounds like a dream. But the first year was actually complete chaos. It was, Yes, 3 days of available work time where I would have all my meetings,
Mm,
my discoveries, sales, marketing, like you're doing everything, as a business owner. And then I would find myself working in the evenings after the kids are in bed, working in the weekends after, while they're napping, in between activities,
mhm.
things like that. And then Mondays and Fridays, when one of my kids is home with me, I'm like waiting for him to go down for a nap so that I can go
I know
work.
that
And then
feeling.
I'm responding to Slacks and things. And my husband's like, wait, wasn't this not the point of this whole thing? And I was like, listen, mind your business. Don't tell me mine. AKA, you're right. And you never want to admit it to your spouse. And so, um, and at that point, I realized, okay, I need to make a few switches. I need to not be so afraid of expanding a little bit and delegating. So I have a bench of copywriters that kind of help me fulfill the client deliverables. I actually went into the Exit 5 community to get like really good recommendations. And I knew I was not going to cheap out on talent at all, wasn't going to outsource it to AI, wasn't going to just get someone fresh off the LinkedIn streets or get someone that was just like offshore mediocre talent. These are people who have more experience in SaaS writing than even me. And I was like, I want people to come in who can also teach me and make my process
Absolutely.
better. And that's exactly what I did. I got people who are like very, very good. I pay them very well. It hurts every time to pay an invoice, but it's like good quality, high quality work, and they
Yeah,
teach me a lot as well. And that was when the kind of switch happened. And now I actually get to work 3 days and not worry about it the other days, just minimal emails here and there. But, a night of working has not happened since like November of last year. So the true thing has happened now this year. And I tell everyone all the time, it's okay. It's whatever your goals are. So if you are like, I got to make money and that's my passion and that's what I want to do, then you're going to do everything you can, put in all the hours to make money. For me, I wanted more time. So my goal is how can I either get really efficient in my processes and how I handle work and spend my time? Can I delegate to other people to do a
yeah,
lot of the things so that I don't have to, but it's like good quality work. So that's kind of where I do a lot of my focus is around that area. And then my involvement is the things that are really priority, like talking to the clients, the discovery calls,
yeah,
the research process. There's one stage in my business I don't really want to hand off to someone else, but it's also
absolutely.
the most fun part for me to do. And I will continue to do that and they still buy in because of me and I want to still be involved in some regard. So that's where
Yeah,
I am right now.
100%. I
Yeah.
I love that. I think you, to some extent, are speaking to some people's dreams, if you will.
Oh,
So, but it's really cool to kind of hear the progression and the transition. And
yes.
a lot of people, we've spoken to on CP Mike already have different kind of trajectories or paths, but they all kind of lead to ultimately where you yourself want to be and need to be in your given time. So I love that. I also love you're speaking to one of the core values over at ClearVoice is outsourcing and knowing when to just kind of like let go, and let bring in an expert, like you said, someone that probably knows more.
Yeah.
Like, hey, help me, like, because I need it. And ultimately, yes, there's I'll help you. So it's a little bit of that trade off where, you can get that time, that efficiency, focus on the priorities, that you need to focus on in order to be successful. And yes, your career, but also your own life.
Yeah. And it's different seasons, right? Like, I think that especially as women, as moms, we're always told, like, okay, well, you got to give it all to your career. You got to also be the best mom on the planet. It's that saying of like, we're supposed to work like we don't have kids and have kids like we don't have a job or whatever. And it's like, yeah, and I was like, "So what, can I do both?" Because I've always been ambitious my entire life, and, like, in college, I was voted most likely to be CEO, which I guess did happen, just not in the way that I thought. And, but at the same time, I'm like, "Okay, this is just such a small season, like, your kid's only small, like, the first 5 years, and then they go to school, and then it's like, that's it, here you are Monday to Friday with nothing but
Yeah.
time, and then what?" So I feel like this is a good season. And so maybe 2 years from now, if we talk, both my kids are in school it might be a totally different thing where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm bored. I'm going to go all in. Like maybe I'll have a revenue goal. Like, I don't know. So I think that it's okay. And two things can be true at the same time. You can also
Sure.
want to have time to yourself and be ambitious, but there's only so much of you that you can give. And then this season and this chapter, I want to give more towards the time and efficiency than I
Mm.
do like grow at all costs and like whatever and scale and scale and scale and scale. Like
Yeah.
I'm not dying to do that. I'm like good just being comfortable for now and knowing like you're going to give and take at some, right? So don't set lofty revenue goals and then also be like, and I want to be a really present mom all the time. And it's like, that's not going to happen. So
Setting
yeah.
realistic goals.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I hear that. Absolutely. As a mother myself, I'm like,
Yes.
mm-hmm. And I think switching gears, but also not like the Scroll Lab, it's your baby, it's your vision.
Yeah.
And kind of tell us a little bit about the vision behind it and how it ties to, I guess, solving challenges. But if we're gonna go into it, I'll go there. Solving today's B2B challenges.
Yeah.
So, can you kind of open the doors there? I'd love to dig deep there.
Yeah, when I first started the Scroll Lab, it wasn't the Scroll Lab, it was Delphinium Solutions, which is still the parent company. And at that point, when I'd entered and kind of started the business, it was like, oh, I do everything web and digital related. Uh,
Yeah.
and then slowly, as I started to niche down and found a lot of success there and found this core problem, which is around landing pages, specifically for like paid campaigns. And the POV was kind of shaping around really focusing on how buyers are consuming information because there's so many actions that happen before that conversion takes place. And so I'm not saying don't worry about conversions. I'm saying there's so much we have to look at before in order to make those conversions meaningful and make them turn up in volume, right? So I always talk about how are people consuming information. So consumption rate optimization first, then conversion rate optimization. And so
Hmm.
as I'm looking at that, we're going through like I've worked with like almost 30 companies now and going through their landing pages and seeing how people are consuming information. It's like, how do I get them to go in, buy into the story that's on these landing pages, right? And that's what we want to tell is the story of this, of why they should buy this specific product or how it could solve their problems and not make it a hard sell, but give it to them in a way that they feel informed enough to want to take meaningful action, which is talking to your company or, starting a trial or whatever the case may be. And so the Scroll Lab came about because of that consumption POV, getting people to read, getting people to scroll, getting people to consume the information on the page, which ultimately leads
Hmm.
them to the action that you want them to take. So I was like, that's great, and it was enough too where it's not always going to be about landing pages. Scroll could also be a mechanism for how people consume my LinkedIn content, how they consume content across other channels before they come to you, just things like that. So it gave me a lot more avenues and options. Plus, it was a lot easier of a name. And and then
Sure.
obviously a lot of the testing and iteration is around how people are consuming information because I feel like conversions are kind of too much of a lagging indicator. When someone's made a conversion in B2B, it's kind of like it's too late. They've done 80% of research before they've come to you. So conversions are kind of they've like you've convinced them through some other channels, but what are you doing to actually convince them to get to that conversion step? And that's the testing that we're doing. So, for example, with
Mhm.
one of my clients, we found out that like 15% of the clicks was on the fourth FAQ on the page. So we made that its own block. And then the conversions jumped up by 265%. So it's how are people consuming that information? Those are the steps that get there before, they make the conversion. And
Yeah.
so you would have never made that optimization based solely on conversion data because those are people who have already signed up. You have to look at where people are before they sign up, where they're
Hmm.
getting stuck.
Yeah.
What is the information they're looking for? What do they need? And that's the kind of things that we want to supply them, and treat buyers with respect so that ultimately they can make that decision to contact you.
Ultimately, you found your niche, I would say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I love what you said of, I mean, as a content nerd
Yes.
myself, I love what you said of the ultimately the like the consumption and how they get there,
Yeah.
because that is going to help fuel more, and not just quantity but quality, like
Yes.
exactly who you're looking for, and also vice versa, what they're looking for as the customer. So kind of looking a little bit more detailed as to what's resonating, what's not. How are you typically going about that?
Yeah. So the number one thing I tell people is you don't need any new fancy tool, none of that. You need two things. You need just your regular web analytics, which most people
Mhm.
are really afraid of GA for good reason. So
It's scary, yeah.
whatever your web analytics is, right? To understand if there are people visiting the pages that you're putting out, are they the right people, right? So sometimes you could layer on, if you do have a tool like some kind of website identification tool or whatever, you can see if the right accounts are reaching the page. So those are kind of a couple of things. But I love putting heat maps on pages because the heat
Blow my
maps is
mind.
what's going to tell you exactly how people are reading the page, where they're dropping off. The 15% of FAQ clicks came from heat map. You would have never gotten that from GA or even your CRM or anything else, right? Like
Yeah.
you're going to get it from the heat map. And the beautiful thing about heat map tools is most of them offer like 2,000 sessions a month for free that they will record, or and you don't really need much more than that to make, you know, decisions about how people are consuming content or seeing how they're doing it. So I watch session recordings like people watch Netflix. New Love is
I
Blind
love
season's out,
that.
by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm watching both. But so
Mm.
those are the things that I look at, and I'm looking at where people are getting stuck. What are they spending a lot of time on? Where are they clicking? Why do they care about this? And most things like GA or other tools will maybe track a click or a conversion on like a button, but if it's
Mhm.
not a button, how do you know? And so heat map
Yeah.
tools are like the underrated tool of how people are consuming content. And it was one of those things where even at one of my last companies, we had a lot of gated content, like a lot of gated PDFs. We were
Ooh,
manufacturing
yeah.
SaaS. But the thing is, manufacturing SaaS, targeting plant managers, those kinds of things, they're not online all day. So for them, they actually did like the PDF downloads. We got a lot of business that came from there. It was a lot of technical documentation because it's manufacturing SaaS, like, you know.
Sure.
And so they loved it. But then once they downloaded it, and we got a huge number of downloads, we had zero insights after that. So we went through this huge project to take every gated asset, every gated PDF, and turn it into a gated web page. And the reason we did that is so that we could put heat maps on it and see after they hit download, how many times were they coming back to that link? How were they consuming the information that was on the web page? It was a huge effort. And we didn't have AI at that point. So we like manually did this project and transferred over like 200 PDFs into web pages
Oh my
just so we
gosh.
can,
I'm
yeah,
thinking a couple. 200. Okay.
200.
Wow.
Yes. And then we changed them all into web pages so that we could track and understand movement patterns, consumption signals of how these very like technical people with manufacturing SaaS were reading documentation. And
Yeah.
that is kind of where it started for me, where I was like, oh, consumption is so much more important than, this. So like things in reporting I would do would be like, hey, we ran ads for this pilot. And it was for like this one integration. Oh, did we get any conversions off of it? No. But what we did see was like a 30% increase in the consumption of this one blog post we did about the integration 2 years ago. Like
Mm.
randomly, it is starting to
It
surface. So
resurfaced.
it's
Yeah.
telling that story of like people saw the ad, they clicked, they didn't do anything on the landing page, but then they came back to the site or they went to search and looked up this integration
They
to
took
read more
another
about it.
action. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
They're doing the
created,
research
yeah, they're
to
doing the research.
eventually
Yes.
see if they might convert. Yeah.
And it's a
And what
signal.
helped you? The
Yeah.
landing page and the insights to see that.
So now what you can do is that 30% of people, or the increase in that blog post now has given us that signal of like, oh, people are interested in this, they're researching that. But now you can use that blog post to create an audience to then send retargeting ads related
Yep.
to the integration to then
Now you
eventually
got a
connect.
campaign. You got an even bigger
Yeah,
like
there you
thing.
go.
I
Phase
love
two of
that.
the campaign.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's also so interesting. I'm curious. First off, I'm kind of baffled by the amount of PDFs and
Yeah.
web pages. That's a big lift, but clearly a lift for a reason
Yes.
and something that provided so much insight and success ultimately. And I mean, give or take, I'm kind of cautious when I say people's attention spans are shrinking per se. I think it varies,
Yes.
but is there something in particular? I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear it from you that really makes, at the end of the day, our executives, what do they want? They want the numbers. They want the conversions. What really makes a landing page convert in the era of what is 2025 today?
Well, there are a few things. I don't have a magic pill for what's going to make someone convert on like a B2B, you know,
Yes.
ACV product of like $5,000 or more, let alone like 20,000, 100,000. So sometimes I have conversations with companies and they're like, "Oh my gosh, if we could just move the conversion rate like even 1 point, I would be really happy." And I'm like, "Okay, listen, I don't have a magic pill for you to take to help increase this. But there are a few things that we can do. The biggest thing with the shrinking attention spans, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is focus. It's really hard to keep someone's focus because we are focusing on like 100 things at the same time, right? Your phone's going off.
6 billion tabs are
Oh, yeah,
open.
all those
Yeah.
things. And so what ends up happening is like a buyer or a user gets a lot of fatigue, which is why like, my in-laws are like blue collar workers and they're like, you sit at home all day and work. How are you guys even tired at the end of the day? It is a lot of
Yes,
mental load. It is a lot of
absolutely.
mental load to be sitting in front of a screen, consuming a lot of information, expelling a lot of information, communicating all day long. Yes, it is very, very draining. So your responsibility then is to make things easy to consume. The things that are easy to consume are the things that are going to get retained and eventually remembered, right? So on a landing page, you want to minimize a lot of distractions because that immediately pulls focus. So you want to focus on a few core things. Usually I'm like team one CTA, but like I'll do two every once in a while. Navigations now, I used to say no nav, but now Google will actually punish you if you don't have a navigation on your
Yeah,
landing page. So
seen
we
that.
do an in between, which is an anchored nav, which is walking you through the story on the page itself, things
Yes.
like that. The second thing to making it easier to consume is to just write in an eighth grade level or below, which is so interesting to me because it's like the statistic is like 76% of Americans, have an eighth grade education or below. But even the 24% that can read at a higher level. Ultimately,
Hmm.
humans are lazy. We are built for efficiency. That is why AI exists. Okay. It's
We
like
want to
we have
skim.
completely built, yeah, for like, can something else do the work for me? So you have to think about that mindset is when we're consuming so many points of information every day, you have to make it easy to consume. How many times you open like a news article. This is like my biggest pet peeve. Open news article. I'm like ready to read. There are 1,000 ads on there, but it's added to the weight of the page. So it keeps reloading or like things keep popping up and you're like, I'm over it. And you're just like, it's not worth it to me.
Tap
So it's
out.
kind of a similar principle where you're like, okay, it's not even about long form or short form. It's just like the mode that you're in. I
Mm.
wrote a post about this like a couple weeks ago, which is when I'm on LinkedIn, I want to read shorter posts. If your post looks like a blog post, I ain't reading it because I'm not there to consume information in that sense. However, I can go around and say, oh, I want your short form posts, but then I will sit and read like 200 pages of the fantasy novel that I have in the evening in bed when I'm saying that I'm tired and I will read till midnight, right? So it's just the
Sure.
mode that you're in, the mode. So your
Absolutely.
expectation of a given medium. If I go to a news site and I want to read a news article, I'm kind of expecting it to be longer form But it's also like, how easy is it to do it? Do you have appropriate headlines where I can skim and then see if there's sections that are more important to me? Are you just droning on and on and on? Do you have too much of an explanation? Too little? Is it too skimpy of an article? I get annoyed at that, where I'm like, this didn't even have any meat in it. So it's
Yeah.
writing for the mode and platform of expectation,
Mhm.
limiting your distractions, giving people what they expect to see, and then writing it in a way that is easy to consume. So we become very desensitized in SaaS, especially when we see a lot of buzzwords, yet we turn into buzzword demons possessed when we're writing, right? Like, why does that happen?
Yeah. It's
So,
kind of in just corporate jargon too, like
yes,
we hate it, but
we
we
use
do it
it.
ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the other day I wanted to
absolutely.
say something about, and I was like, well, okay, I can't think of a synonym for circle back. Is there one? I want to come back to this thing. I'm like, that's just a circle. We were just saying circle back
Like
a different way.
circle,
Yeah.
loop.
Loop.
It
And I
just keeps
say it in a
going.
different way that isn't going to be. So I think there's those components where, like, don't get hung up on length. Like, one of the things I debunked even in my own work is that people will consume even if it's long, as long as the information is relevant and it's structured in a way that's easy to consume. If I had paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs on a landing page, no one's going to read that. Now, if I break those up and I put visual assets, I put appropriate headlines, they understand which block goes where, it's a logical flow of information, they'll read it. So, those are small tweaks that we have done that have already, like, I will look at things both from a conversion aspect, which is really late, but from a consumption
Mhm.
aspect. So, if someone comes to me and only 30% of their, like, 30% of the users reach the bottom, I'm like, okay, can I get it to 40? Can I get it to 50? That's already like 20% more readership that you didn't have before. And that's important in SaaS, where people are researching a lot before they decide to make a move.
Very much so. And I want to pick your brain. You brought up something that kind of I've experienced myself in
Yeah.
regards to landing pages and building content is visiting the brand profile, the brand guidelines, right? And what that looks like. And sometimes when you're in very technical fields, which I have encountered, they want to write to that regard. But I found myself, just like you're saying, even though that might be the audience and how we typically speak on a landing page, it just wasn't getting it done. And it was a level of trying to find a happy medium of
Yeah.
achieving that, but maybe bringing it down a notch, right? Like maybe we were at a collegiate level and we need to knock it down to, I don't know, like a 10th grade level, right? Like we need to
Yes.
knock it down a little bit because at the end of the day, the yes, your audience is smart, but the mode, what you hit on is very interesting. Do you find yourself kind of encountering a little bit of a push and pull when it comes to adhering to the audience and what the, I guess, brand guidelines might be? I'm sure there's different components, but specifically in regards to content.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I typically do paid landing pages, and so they tend to not be the ones that show up in organic and stuff. I get less pushback on how we write those pages because the reason they came to us is because what they're doing is not working, right? So sometimes
Typically.
when they push back on the type of copy or the type of, like, voice, we're always
Mhm.
like, yeah, but based on our research for this audience, this is typically how they prefer to read information. So a good chunk of my clients target infosec and cybersecurity. Infosec groups tend to be very skeptical if there's minimal information on a page. And not to
Mhm.
say that they want to sit there and read a bunch of technical documentation, but they like a lot more details and specifics. And so you'll find those pages are more copy heavy. They may not be college level. They might still be 10th grade, but we're giving them a little more detail than we would to say, selling to marketers who kind of get the product, or they're trying to skim, or they're just like, I don't have time. I just got to skim this really quick.
Mhm.
Versus an infosec leader who's like, this is not sounding right to me, or I want to dig in deeper and things like that. So with them, we might give them a few more
Interesting.
CTA options to dig in further into the
Mhm.
documentation, versus putting everything on the page, or doing it a little bit um, more beefy in some of our descriptions, giving them a lot more proof points, things like that, those are some of the angles that we take depending on who the audience is. So
I like that.
a lot of things we love to do on LinkedIn is like, it's either you're behind if you're not using AI, or you it's taboo to use AI. There are good ways to use AI, right? It's like a superpower. Can you use it for good or evil? That's like up to you. So most people would be like, okay, here's my landing page I want to write a page for me. And then, it's just like AI writes it the way it's been trained, which is just jargon, buzzword filled nonsense, right? So I'm like, here's what you should be using AI for is give them information about your demographic, right? And say, this is who I'm talking to. This is the offer that we're making on this landing page. I want to write it for this audience. How does this audience like to consume information? Based on the research that you can find across the web or studies that you can find, tell me how InfoSec leaders love to have information distilled down to them. And it will kind of
Mhm.
give you some research back and say, oh, they like it a little more like technical, a little more wordy, da da da. So now you have a basis for like how you need to write that. And you can add that to the brief that you're going to give your copywriters in order
Mhm.
to generate this content. You can also use that brief then to tell ChatGPT, okay, I need you to work through, like, create a shell of a landing page. This is how my audience likes to write it, or likes to read information. Let's start there. And you're going to get a completely different output than if you just asked it verbatim to just spit out a landing page. Cool. It does better with
Yes.
context, just as your writers would do better with context. So
Oh,
that's already a first
absolutely.
step. Hmm.
You give a bare bones brief,
Yes.
and people are like, well, I had different expectations. Like, well, what did you give them?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So,
So, like, let's build it up a little bit more.
yes. And absolutely, like, mode matters, and then who you're talking to matters. It sounds cliche, like audience matters, but it does. So you talking to an infosec person versus a marketer is going to be wildly different.
And getting deeper into that audience as opposed to a broad audience. What are the personas like that we're specifically, you
Yes.
know, targeting, as opposed to, you could do broader, but who are we really talking to here, and where are they at?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, mode. You can analyze that in various different ways, I'm sure, but getting more detailed, more nuanced, as opposed to, I guess, a very similar tactic in, like, in sales. Like, broad customer profile isn't going to get you very far, because then you're talking to everyone, and it's just
Yes.
noise, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
And kind of digging a little bit into the, I guess, the content landscape, you definitely opened up the doors there with a brief, which I love. We all love briefs. If you don't and you cringe at it, I'll send
We
you more
can't be
briefs.
friends. Yeah.
um, I think sometimes there tends to be, unfortunately, a bit of silos still, that we need to collaborate more. I'm all for that. But how do you think content teams should think about their role in supporting these more conversion driven assets, specifically like landing page? Sometimes I feel like there is a tendency to be like, that's not really me. And they go towards organic, but I'm very like, content is everything. It's the glue, it connects everything. So, what should content teams think about more in regards to their role of supporting these assets?
Yeah. If the content team is responsible for actually then writing these landing pages, right? Like, if you're doing this in-house, typically when I was in-house, it was a mix of us from a conversion aspect, product marketing who would give us like the messaging doc and framework to make sure we're talking about the right things, and then the content team would actually be like writing the copy for it to make sure that it's wordsmithed correctly and according to the brand voice and all of these things. The
Mm-hmm.
problem was that we were never starting from like a core place. So each of us had our frameworks, each of us had our points of view, and then we would inject that. And that's the issue with most landing pages and websites in B2B, is like, it's just a bunch of stakeholder opinions, and everybody's
Yeah,
got their own, like, it's a quilt. That's what I call it. It's like a pot roast, which is
I see
fine.
that.
There's a place for pot roast, I guess, just not in B2B, right? Just like,
Yeah.
um, and so that's what I do now. It's like when I came out, I was like, shoot, I don't have a lot of time to make sure that
Mhm.
everybody is aligned with what we're trying to do. I don't have a lot of time to learn about the product, the offer, all of these things. I have to get up to speed very quickly in order to produce high quality landing pages within like 3 weeks of the engagement starting. How do I do that? And so, what I actually started doing, most consultants you will see, just companies in general, will try to map out like customer journeys, right? We love to talk about the customer journey, like we can control any of it. They're going to do whatever they want. The only thing that we can control is what information we supply and how we supply it to them in order for them to go around their journeys, right? And one of the things I realized when I was in house and I had budgets and I was buying software and partnering with vendors and things like that, I had a business case that I had to put together to get approvals internally for the budget, for the buy in on bandwidth, for these other teams to support my implementations, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
And it was like the 6-page slide deck, which I keep telling myself I need to post on LinkedIn. I keep forgetting. And it was like, here's the thing that I used to have to use, and I would just rebrand it every company I went, but it was the same thing I would do in order to get all these approvals. And that's what your
Mhm.
buyers are doing. They're collecting the research, getting the approvals, and then coming to you when they're kind of like they've secured everything to move forward. Once I realized that there was a huge discrepancy in how we write content, how we write these landing pages versus how I consumed information as a buyer, I'm like, wow, I wonder if I just gave buyers the information they needed to put in the business case on these landing pages, I wonder if that would transform things. And that was kind of my theory that I built the entire business around. And so what ended up happening was it worked twofold. One, yes, it gave the buyers the right information, but two, it helped me learn and align myself about my clients and their products quickly because I only needed the information that really the buyers needed. I didn't need anything outside of that, right? Like I didn't need the 100 messaging docs and versions. I didn't need all of those things. As different iterations went on, I realized here are the most important questions. I would do like a market overview of like, what's your product category? Who are you for? Who are you targeting? What are your primary use cases, right? You're not going to talk about every use case. What are your primary use cases? What are the alternatives that you're up against? Not just other competitors, but your like what's the status quo? Are they using manual workflows right
Yeah.
now? What's going on there? Okay, your solution, I use the Fletch value proposition canvas. So, with their blessing, obviously. And I use that to understand the product. Give me your primary features, and then we're going to bundle them into problem and solution themes. And those are the themes that are going to drive the information on these landing pages. What's your social proof landscape like? Not just the testimonials that you got from your customers or gong calls, but also what are people saying about you on Capterra, on Trustpilot, on G2,
Yes.
whatever, agnostically? What are people saying about you on Reddit? And then finally,
Mhm.
what are pricing? Please tell me that you show pricing. That's fine. Half of B2B companies don't. Fine. Can you at least do a starting range? That would be great. And then finally, the last part is last two parts. One, the objections that you hear on sales calls. We're actually going to put that in the FAQs. And then finally, the sales process. So after they do decide to give you their information, what happens? Just 2 to 3 steps. When are they going to be contacted? Are they just going to be thrown into an email sequence? That's the stuff the buyer needs to know, right? Like, I'm looking for this. What are my options? Why are you better?
Mhm.
What are the problems I have and how are you solving them? How much do you cost? Have my peers used you? What are the common objections that I either have or I'm not thinking of, right? The
Yeah.
real ones. And then what happens if I do give you my information? That's it.
Yeah. And it's so funny because you make it sound so simplistic, but the way you described it is you do such a deep intake,
Yes.
right? Like you are
Yeah.
doing, yes, research, but you're really working with the customer and like doing an intake and being
Yes.
like, what is all of this information? Oh, you don't have it? We need to find that out. That matters. And
Yes.
so you can feed the customer ultimately exactly what they're looking for because they're going to go research for it in different
Anyway, with or
avenues
without
already.
you. Yes. With
Yeah,
or without you.
absolutely. It's masterful and it sounds so simplistic, but you're right. It's a lot, but it's necessary if you really want the quality and ultimately to achieve those goals, right? Like if you really want to do it correctly, you have to really think through it.
Yes. And we don't do that. Like, I wish I did that much thinking in house too, versus like we're just running. We're just like trying to get all this stuff done. We've got
Yeah.
45 campaigns. Like, I don't have time to think about the product. The product is product marketing's problem. Just tell me what I need to put on the page.
Yeah.
And I did that. I made so many of the mistakes, but the thing is, like, I didn't have the luxury of the time and focus like I have now to just focus on what makes a good landing page. I never had the time to really even think about that. I was quadruple booked with meetings. My boss had new ideas I had to implement every week. I'm like, oh crap. Just when
Sure.
I thought I could breathe, I couldn't. And then I'm pregnant and going on maternity leave and like my team's leaving and like, you're just dealing with so much.
Sure.
And so sometimes it's not even that like in-house teams aren't capable. They're 100% capable. They're doing too much, and they need the help, and they need someone to just come in and go, just handle this for me because I'm dealing with like 1600 things, and that's really what it
Yeah.
is. And so then they like the thought and stuff, and they could get there if all they ever had to think about for a year was landing pages, but they don't have that luxury, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is you've even said a lot of your landing page work has transitioned into the literal site itself.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
would you say that it's essentially the same analysis, just at a perhaps a larger scope or larger scale? You're not focusing on just one page or one solution. You're focusing much broader and maybe look at things page by page perspective, but very similar approach. Yes.
Yes, my process is really unchanged. And so we still go through I will not work with anyone who does not go through the business case exercise with me. So that is like essential for me to create good quality, any of the outputs, right? You just swap
Yeah.
landing pages with email sequence, with like, your drift chatbot or whatever it is, right? Like
Mhm.
all of those things stem from the same core foundation of why you exist as a company, what product you're selling, and why you're different, right? All comes from the same spot. The real work that changes, the landing pages, even the wireframes, all of that stuff looks the same. But it's good for us to understand who the audience is, because on a paid landing page, you could be running a campaign that's specific to one use case, one vertical, one segment, right? You could be like Calendly for marketers. Okay, mostly marketers, you can control the traffic. Marketers are coming to this landing page. You can make assumptions based on that. Your homepage and your main website, Taylor could visit the site. Internal employees could visit the site. Your mom could visit your site. Your husband's pulling up the site to show someone, like, yeah, this is a company that my wife works at. So you start to make
Absolutely.
decisions based on more of a muddled pool of users
Hmm.
rather than more targeted users. So
Hmm.
some of those experiences change. Like the anchored nav I told you about, now you're going to have the full site nav on there, right? You're also going to account for things like duplicate content. So you're
Hmm.
going to be more mindful of the organic rules for showing up in search,
Yes.
versus being able to repurpose a lot of these blocks in paid because they're not indexed, right? And so there are just small rules like that we change, but that's all we need to know, like from the writing perspective. Is like, okay, what's the source, whatever. So now I would say this year, actually, it's like about 40% of my clients are like, can we just skip I just want you to write for the main page. I'm like, okay, same process. We would just think of
It
the
is. Yeah.
intentions a little bit differently, and that's it.
And I mean, I'm speaking probably, yes, for myself, but probably for many others out there in the broad spectrum of marketing, but even specific to content, that if we could spend X amount of time, or just even half the amount of time maybe that you do in research to get that information, to supplement and combine it with like brand guidelines, the content would be just so much better.
Yes.
And it would take less time to get to that point. Whereas, it takes practice to get to a point where, you know, you have to put in the work to ultimately nail it or get closer. And sometimes it's not always going to hit 100%.
No.
But if we could get that 90% and get there faster, chef's kiss.
Yes, exactly, chef's kiss.
Absolutely.
I know, it's funny because some of my clients are like, "That in itself, you could just do that." I'm like, "Not even create the landing page?" And they're like, "No, just do that." I was like, "Okay, what would I be like?" "I'm the buyer's business case consult." I know.
100%. 100%. I have a few couple like lingering questions, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I'm very curious. Just I hate in the landscape of today, in the era of AI. Like, but if we're being realistic, it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And you have that along with, personalization and now interactive design. Where do you see, I guess, just websites, landing pages really heading? Because, I mean, things are constantly evolving, things are constantly changing, but at least as of some of the more heavier progressions of AI and personalization has always been a thing, but there's a heavier lean into it because of AI now. And also now more interactive designs. Where do you see things kind of heading? Is it kind of leaning heavily into all of that? What is it?
I think ultimately buyers are going to, they already are. They're doing a lot more research using AI. And
Hmm.
so if they're not doing it in the, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini interface itself and saying, hey, I'm looking for X tool. I have this problem, da 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 da. And so everyone's like, SEO is dead because everybody's asking the LLM. But it's
Yeah,
like, sir,
it's
where do
just
you think the
evolved.
LLMs are getting it from? Like they're getting these answers from the pages that you're creating. So you got to continue to create that information. That's one.
Yep. Mhm.
Second, I actually saw some interesting things when I went to the spring conference earlier this year. There's a company that actually has like a website LLM. And what it does is instead of you having your ClearVoice website, they would type in clearvoice.com and it would literally be like a chat interface. And the user would ask questions about Clear. What do you do? Oh, can you solve for this use case? How much do you cost? All of these things within this chat interface instead of actually having these static web pages. And
Go find
so,
it for yourself. Yeah.
yeah, you go find it for yourself or you ask the website. So it's going to be almost a conversational type experience than a static, you have no idea what's going on. It'll take a little bit to get there. I still know like lots of companies who don't even have websites. So it's like, come on, 2025 here. But
Yeah.
I think ultimately that foundational information that I showed you is going to be so important to have
Mhm.
accessible no matter what the format is. So we're going to end up working in like knowledge bases or things like that, where we're pumping information. You, as the head of content, as you get more information, you're going to be putting all of those things in
Mhm.
this knowledge base and like managing that knowledge base of information of what you want to be publicly available. And that's what LLMs are going to pull from, what your website search is going to pull from,
Mhm.
those types of things. So I think format will become less important and context is going to become more important. And you're going to want all of those
Interesting.
things in there, right? And
Mhm.
so I see that happening. Personally, I hope web pages never go away just because I love putting them together and I love how they look. And I'm like, I'm such a
Yeah.
visual person by nature. So I'd want to see some
It's
of
in a
that.
creative, yeah,
Yeah, the
absolutely.
creative aspect of it. There's going to be a lot more of like people using AI to write, but then you don't give it the proper context, it's going to look like AI wrote it. So
Yep.
there's those pieces. So there's a part of me that's like excited about some of the changes because it makes my work more fun and interesting and things
Mhm.
like that. And then on the other end, it's like, the doomsday, like, oh my God, are we all just doomed? And then I realized that, you know, I'll tell AI like, hey, should I go like steal this thing? And they're like, that's a great idea. Here are the 5 steps to go and steal this thing from a car. And you're like, okay, yeah, it's just going to keep telling me I have great ideas and just giving people the wrong notion. But
It's really self-validating.
it's very, very self validating. And I think ultimately, like I said, it's a tool. You can use it for good or you can use it for evil. But the people who have the advantage are the ones who've had that lived experience and know what good looks like. And so
Sure.
what's the saying? It's like money can't buy taste. Well, AI can't get you like expert level if you don't know what good looks like, right? You kind of have to
Yeah.
have that lived experience of like, oh, this is kind of tacky. Right?
Mhm.
And that's what we're ending up is like people are just using it and it's looking kind of tacky. So you still need someone to come in and it can give you the shell, but you need someone to come in who has that like designer's eye.
Absolutely. That lived experience, the just also the just human aspects of it too,
Yes.
where, we hit other things like, you've mentioned mental roadblocks, things like that. So like
Yes.
we put a human component to it at the end of the day. That'll never go away. And I know a lot of people get a little doom and gloom, but like,
Yeah.
you know, take a step back and know like it's all good.
Yeah.
you know, and I think I'd love for you to leave, maybe like if you had to leave marketers with one piece of advice for, I guess, improving conversions, but also maybe more generally, what would it be? What would be your one piece of advice?
Okay, I'll give you two. One, don't skip on the research. And I don't mean someone else has done the research for you and you're just chilling. Like, I would say,
Yeah.
like, do the research. Those questions that I asked earlier, the very simplistic ones, ask yourself if you know those things about your own company and your own product. And chances are, like, I'm still thinking back to some of the companies I worked at in-house. Maybe I was just a bad marketer, but like I can't answer those things for those companies even today. I'm like, wait, what do I know? And I did entire website redesigns for them. And I could tell you surface level what verticals we targeted and stuff, but like why? Why were we
Sure.
better? What were the alternative? I don't know what the alternatives were. Like, I mean, I knew generally here were our competitors, but it's like, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
were there status quo ways? What were the like machine parts that just those types of things. So like you can't do good marketing if you don't know enough about the product and what makes it different and why and what buyers are evaluating. So put together that business case in your mind based on those questions and what we showed here earlier. That's one. Two, if you're like, I ain't got time for that, how can I just like quick win some of these landing pages? One of the things that I love to do is just take a landing page, take all the copy on a landing page, put it into ChatGPT and say, give me a buzzword count on this page. If you
Ooh.
want a humbling experience, that's a great one. And if you're having ChatGPT then write your landing page for you, ask it to just write it, right? And then say, hey, can you do a buzzword count on the landing page that you just gave me? And it will give you a buzzword count, and that will also be humbling, right? And then on top of that, you're gonna say, okay, here's some additional context about our audience. Maybe you have an ICP doc. You can put that in there so it has more context on your ICP. Maybe it has some more context on like, here's my product category, here are our core competitors. Make sure that you rewrite this landing page. Can you minimize the number of buzzwords that we're using? Let's try not to write above an 8th or 10th grade level.
Mm.
And then try explaining it in normal terms. Highlight the largest capabilities and differentiators in the copy and like, let's go, right? And you're already going to get a page that is 90% better than other pages out there.
Yeah. You hit on one thing already that just cracks me up. So one mentor in life taught me, we love to sometimes sound smart and love to
Yes.
use bigger words, which sometimes are buzzwords, or just, the best one I ever got was we love the word utilize.
Yes.
What is utilize?
Yeah.
It's use.
Use. Yeah.
Just say use,
Yeah. Just
right?
say
So,
use.
like what you're saying is that kind of buzzword count, but even also like the simplification of it too. Like
Yes.
maybe layman's terms, maybe not, but just getting it to a level that's like understandable.
Conversational.
All
Yeah.
going back to your also conversational in your mode, right? Like
Yes.
all going back to that. And then you can heat map it out, like you said, and just watch and learn and make changes. And essentially, I'll bring it back to Netflix, Love is Blind. You can
Yeah.
binge it like that
Yeah.
essentially and really make better optimizations
Yeah.
uh, for consumption and ultimately conversions.
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly.
Also, is it Denver that's out?
Yeah, what city? No, it's UK. Love is Blind UK
Oh,
is out.
Love is Blind UK.
And then
Okay.
I think we
Switching
did
gears, guys. This
Denver.
is now a Love is Blind
Love is
podcast.
Blind podcast. And I think the next US one is Columbus, which is where I live. And so I'm very, very interested to see the
Oh
Columbus one
my
because they were
gosh.
filming here like last year. So
I'm always very intrigued by where they film.
yeah.
Um, it's just so unique in general. I
Yes.
digress.
Yeah.
I digress. But no, Taz, it's been a pleasure having you on. You're awesome. You're great. I'd love for you to plug away. Where can listeners really find you, learn more from you, uh, go for it.
Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn. That's the best place. Tas Bober, TAS, last name Bober. Find me there. I post a ton of stuff. I would say like 80% about landing pages, 20% just having fun and trolling and doing some other things. I also leave a lot of unhinged comments. That's really where the party's at on my end. But if you want more landing page resources and everything in one place, I do have a free landing page resource hub that I built for marketers. There's like 3,000 marketers who have it. Please go to my website, thescrollab.com, find the resource hub there. And if you're like, I don't care about landing pages, I just want more unhinged, I have a Spotify playlist that's just called Tas, and it's all the songs I've collected since 2014, since I got Spotify. So you can kind of age with me through
Oh
all
my
of my all of my music, and it's like it's got a ton of hip hop because that's what I primarily listen to, and then random sprinkles of stuff. So if you're into that, use that as your workout playlist. And yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn.
I love that. I might have to try that. Now
Yeah.
I'm so curious. I'm gonna go on Spotify
It's
right now.
it's very so don't listen with your kids in the car, thank you.
Un- Understandable. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, with my kids, we're pretty much on a Disney princess phase right now,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
can't escape that.
Yeah, can't.
But no, I love that.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure, Taz, and we will hopefully have you back soon.
Alright, please do.
A huge thank you to Taz for joining us and sharing her insights on building landing pages that actually convert. And if you're ready to evaluate your content strategy with expert talent, head on over to clearvoice.com.